Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Nemis Nemakonde. I am the Director of Enrollment at Hult International Business School. I am joined this evening by my colleague from Admit Master, Sergey. We're going to be taking you through tips on how to conquer the GMAT, but first we're going to start off with just a quick overview of Hult International Business School and introduce you to this dynamic school. The world is changing at a rapid rate, and however, business schools are not. Global change is transforming everything around us, and it calls for something new. It calls for a different type of school and a different type of career. You're going to need the instincts of an entrepreneur, you'll need the vision that transcends borders, and you'll need to learn by doing. You'll need more than the status quo. Because your time is irreplaceable, and your ideas can literally change everything. This is why we exist. This is why we are different. Hult is a new kind of business school for the global generation. At Hult, we have several programs that we offer. We have our Global MBA program, which is a full-time one-year program, and we also have a flexible part-time executive MBA program. And then we also offer some specialized master's degrees. We have the Master of International Business program, the Master of International Marketing program, Master of Finance, and Master of Business Analytics programs. Your curriculum at Hult. Your degree is designed so that skills development and practical application are fully integrated into the core of the program. As you learn the technical business knowledge and theory, you will constantly apply this by yourself through challenges and in a group setting through challenges. And this will help you strengthen your soft as well as your hard skills. So you'll be taking lessons out of the classroom and apply them real time to an ongoing problem. At Hult, we'll take you through immersion, so we give you the skills necessary to be successful throughout your journey at Hult. And as you can see, the year is broken up into modules where you'll go through the core fundamentals of business, you'll go through practical application, you'll then finish this off with leadership, and then you have this opportunity of where you can then put this into practice through our Future Business Challenge at Hult, which is a fantastic opportunity to learn. And at Hult, you also have continuous access to career development as well as ongoing education, where our alumni are allowed to continuously come back and sharpen their skills with what we call continuous learning, where you get to take an elective for life for free at Hult. We have a multicultural and very dynamic community at Hult. The pie chart is actually an accurate visualization of our student body. 90% of the students at each of our campuses are international. We have over 150 nationalities represented in the student body and over 100 languages spoken. Our master's candidates have an average of about 1 year of full-time work experience, and our MBA candidates have an average of about 7 years work experience, and they are at an average age of 24 and 31 respectively. One of the other dynamic things that we offer at Hult is our faculty. Hult professors have successfully worked in the real world, and they bring those experiences into the classroom. They bring theory into life. Some have worked in senior positions in multinational corporations like McKinsey & Company, Deloitte, Coca-Cola, Motorola. Others have started their own business and have also developed their own patents. Again, the international theme is recurring not through just our locations, but also through our student body and our faculty, making us a truly dynamic business school. At Hult, practical learning and experiential learning is absolutely key. Hult's unique curriculum teaches you and gives you the theory to find opportunities that apply to the real world. This new approach is what sets Hult apart from the rest. We have what's called the Hult Future Challenge. The Future Challenge will group you into teams of 5 to 6 individuals where you will work in a competitive setting on a challenge to devise plans to harness technology and create new business opportunities for startups and existing companies. We also take you through experiential learning through continuous simulations, again allowing you to test the theories that you've learned in the classroom in real time. And a recurring theme again is leadership, because once you've done with MBA, you are looking to go into a leadership position, and you do want to be able to harness those skills so you can achieve results through the efforts of others. Then we have our dual degree program. Most students come to Hult to make a change. 99% of them want to change either their industry, function, or geography after graduation. It is difficult to make any changes in a difficult job market, even more so as an international student. That is why we've created our dual degree program. It is designed specifically for students who are looking to make those big changes. With our dual degree program, which can only be done if you're enrolling in either our MBA or our MIB program, it allows you to pair a second master's degree program so that in 18 months you're graduating with not one, but 2 master's degrees, again helping you separate yourself from others. These are the companies where Hult grads secure jobs when they graduate. As you can see, these are household companies. The Hult MBA as well as master's programs are globally recognized by these companies, and our students are getting fantastic opportunities at all of these companies. The global rotation program at Hult. Experience the world with Hult's global rotation. At Hult, you have the opportunity to explore up to 3 different locations over the course of 1 year. We don't partner with other schools. Every single one of these locations is a Hult campus. We manage our own campuses so that you can rotate to them without any interruption to your studies and absolute continuity. Our central campuses are located in places of influence, power, culture. You will experience the business customs of the location firsthand, learn the local business knowledge each time you step into the classroom. This gives you the opportunity of learning the nuances of doing business around the globe in that 1 year. When you graduate at Hult, you immediately graduate with a truly international and accessible network. Last year, students came from over 150 different nationalities, and as I mentioned before, over 100 languages were spoken at Hult. I think this is an absolutely fantastic feat, and not any other school can claim this. I'm going to tell you about the Hult GMAT requirements. Your GMAT score must be less than 5 years old. We accept a range of scores. Both the GMAT and the GRE are accepted. Scores over 650 can actually be considered for academic excellence. It will make you an eligible person to help you take advantage of that opportunity. The Hult application method. We have a very unique application process at Hult, and we want you to appreciate that at Hult, we want to get to know our candidates first. We consider multiple things in your application. We have a very holistic approach at how applications are reviewed. We will take in your work history, your professional references, your essays. You'll go through a personal assessment interview. We'll look at your test scores, and you will have many opportunities to shine because of this holistic approach. With the admissions process, you will submit a preliminary application, which will be reviewed by an enrollment director like myself. We will then partner with you and coach you through the second phase of the application process, where you will provide supporting documentation, go through an admissions review, as well as submit required test scores. Some GMAT tips for enrolling in at Hult. As an enrollment director, I am not part of admissions. So feel free to share your scores with me, because by sharing your score with me, I can then plot the best path forward for us so that you can be successful. A high GMAT score can compensate for other weaknesses in your application, and a low GMAT score can be corrected with an internal exam or a second attempt. We do not average out your scores. We will take your best score. And lastly, take a practice test. There are lots of practice tests out there, and one that I would recommend is AdmitMaster's free practice test. I am now going to turn this over to my colleague Sergey, who will walk you through the next steps of the GMAT preparation.
Thank you so much, Nimas. Appreciate your warm introduction. And I want to congratulate all of you who joined this webinar, because if you decide to invest an evening or an hour in the evening in developing some valuable skills, then that tells me that you're really serious about taking your life to the next level. And it also tells me that you understand something very, very important. And what's important is that you can't really learn anything if you stay within the boundaries of your comfort zone. You have to get outside of your comfort zone if you want to learn something. In fact, I wanted to show you this little diagram that demonstrates effectively that if you want to learn something, you have to become slightly uncomfortable. Then you will be in what's called the learning zone. You need to adjust to this new environment, to this new state of yourself. And this is how you essentially expand your learning zone. And in fact, we're going to work on this tonight in the next 45 minutes. Now, how are we going to actually do this? Well, we'll make things very simple. Now, I will ask you now to please sit up straight. I'm sure you're sitting comfortable, maybe looking at your computer or your mobile device. Sit up straight, take a deep breath, because I will give you a challenge right now. And the challenge is going to be a critical reasoning question. It's a typical GMAT question from the verbal reasoning section, where you're given an argument and you need to answer a question about this argument. I will give you about 30 seconds to think about this argument and the question, and then we'll have a quick discussion about it. So here you go. This is the argument. All right, so this was 30 seconds. Does anybody have an answer? Can anybody explain what is the answer to this question? Or maybe you might say, well, wait a second, this is a multiple choice exam. You haven't really shown us the answer choices. So maybe show us the answer choices, then we'll know the answer. Okay, no problem. I'll show you the answer choices. I'll give you another 30 seconds. Okay, one person knows the answer. Anybody else? All right, so let's go back to this argument. And let me ask you, I gave you about 30 seconds. Was there anyone who read this argument more than once? Oh, and probably if I gave you more time, you would have probably read it multiple times, because it's a little hard to understand what exactly is going on in this argument. Now, let me ask you a question. This argument, essentially this collection of statements, is written by somebody whose profession is to be an ethicist. Now, who is ethicist? This is a person who studies ethics. Essentially, it's a philosopher who studies the field of ethics. Now, let me ask you, as a future business student, you're trying to get into a business school, how much do you need to know about ethics? Well, I'm sure you would say you have to be ethical, but do you need to know anything about the philosophy side of ethics? Do you really have to understand what that scientist is studying? Or probably not. So how could the GMAT ask us this question? Well, it's probably because this is not really what we need to do to understand what this person is trying to say. Instead, what we will focus on is try to understand not what the person is saying, but how the person is saying it. You'll see in a moment that this is going to be a lot more important. Now let's take a look again at this argument. Here's how we're going to read it if we read for how the author is making an argument. This person begins by saying it would be a mistake to say something. So somebody is making a mistake, and I, as an author, as an ethicist, I'm disagreeing with these people. Now, we call this a claim of an argument. And then let's continue. The question was, about a different part of this argument. It was that part in bold. Now, the part in bold begins with the words, for although it is true that. So everything else in the argument, except for the claim, would really be there to try to support the statement that the author is making, or the claim that the author is making. So that part is probably a support, not really a claim, because we already found the claim at the beginning. But also what's important is that the author begins this statement by saying, for although it is true. So what we can learn from this is that the author does agree with this particular statement, even though ultimately he disagrees with these other people, or maybe he disagrees with the way that they interpret this statement. Now, let's see if this will help us answer these questions. Let's go back to the answer choices. So you remember we learned the part in bold is not a claim, and the author does agree with that part. So let's look at C. How about we start in the middle, just for fun? C says the part in bold was a faulty claim. What do you think? We said, A, it's not a claim. B, the author does agree with it, so it's not really faulty. So C is not the right answer. We can get rid of it. Let's look at D. It is, according to the argument, a commonly held opinion that is nevertheless false. Again, we said the author agrees with it, so D is out. How about E? It reports an observation the argument claims is false. We can stop reading right here. We already know this is not true. The author did agree with it. All right, so now we're down to 2 answer choices. Let's go for the shorter one, because if we're down to 2 and we can get rid of 1, it has to be the other one. We don't even have to read it. So let's look at A. It is a claim for which the argument attempts to provide justification. So that part in bold that was in the middle of the argument was the claim. And we said, no, not really. The claim was these people are wrong. It was at the beginning of the argument. So A is also out. The answer is B. I hope you enjoyed this, and this question really demonstrates that understanding philosophy or understanding any sort of a subject matter, or rather knowing philosophy, is not that important. What is important is really to have the skill to go through this process. And of course, different questions will have different process. Here we use the process of elimination and the process of breaking down the argument into its parts. So let's go back and take a higher level view of what is the GMAT. First of all, it is a 3.5-hour long exam. It is taken on a computer worldwide, only in English, and it is required by most MBA and Masters in Business programs. I'll give you certain facts, just a little trivia. You could take this exam every 16 days. However, there's a limit. The limit is 5 times per year, not more than 8 times in your lifetime. This means that if you've taken the GMAT exam 8 times, you can no longer do your exam ever in your life. Now, if you are getting anywhere close to this limit, please let me know. Send me an email, give me a phone call, hopefully well before you approach that limit, especially because every time you're going to take this test, it is going to cost you $250. So you can technically spend $2,000 taking this test. If you have this exam already scheduled and the exam's approaching and you feel that you're not ready, and we'll talk about how to feel whether or not you're ready, then you could reschedule your exam. As long as you do it within 1 week or more from the day of your exam, you can reschedule it for a fee of only $60. Now let's talk very briefly about the format of the exam. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat box, or we will certainly have time at the end to answer any of your questions, and we can stay behind even after 7 if we need to. And there are 4 sections on the exam. The 2 sections are shorter. There used to be 2 essays in the past. Now the essay has been replaced with an integrated reasoning section, which essentially asks you how well you can deal with business cases. So you're going to have approximately 150 seconds, or exactly 150 seconds if you manage your time well, to deal with every one of the 12 business cases. And then, of course, the 2 sections that everybody is really concerned about are the quantitative reasoning and the verbal reasoning sections. These are the sections that have recently been reduced in length. The number of questions has also been reduced. They used to be both 75 minutes. The organization that runs this test found a way to reduce the number of questions without compromising the algorithm, essentially by removing some of the experimental questions. And as a result, the exam did get shorter. So now it's approximately 3 hours and 30 minutes. You will get a lot of different scores. You will get a total score that consists of your quant and verbal scores. The relationship is not linear. It's not a simple sum, such as on the GRE, for example. So it is calculated using a formula, and without really getting too deep into the formula, I just wanted to mention that if you do well on both quant and verbal, your total score is going to be higher than the score of someone who does very, very well in one section and very poorly on another section. And then you will also see here the percentile score, which is essentially how many people you beat. It is impossible to fail this exam. Even if you answer every single question wrong, you'll still get a score of 200. So that's a little bit of a consolation. You can say, well, at least I got something. But 200, of course, is not a very high score. What matters is how many people you beat of everybody who does this test in the last 3 years, which is approximately 600,000 people. So that's a little bit about the GMAT. Actually, let me introduce myself because I didn't really quite do this yet. My name is Sergey. I'm a senior trainer at AdmitMaster, and I'm also a 99th percentile GMAT instructor. What this means is that I have scored in the top 1% on the GMAT, and my full-time job is to train other people in getting high scores on the GMAT. And high scores, we typically talk about scores 700 and above. I was not born as a 99th percentile GMAT instructor. This is me in grade 1. I actually didn't like math. I didn't like studying. And I certainly didn't know what the GMAT is. And even more so, I did not know how to teach the GMAT. But I had some really, really good teachers all throughout my life. This is my math teacher. He was already retired by the time that he started teaching me in school. And essentially, he was a brilliant person who said, there is a better way than the high school curriculum. And since I'm retired, I don't really care if they fire me. I would like for anyone who is interested to stay after class, and I will show you a better way. And I was staying after class for about 7 years while he was my teacher. And as a result, I was able to go and get 3 university degrees. My first 2 degrees were in rocket science. I have a Bachelor of Physics and a Master of Applied Mathematics. I was actually working on algorithms to send rockets into space. And then at some point, I decided I need something more down to earth. So let me do a 3rd degree. And of course, my 3rd degree was the Master of Business Administration. Just like everyone else, I needed to do my GMAT. I studied for about 2 weeks, and I got a score of 750, which is the top 1% at that time. Here's my score report, just so you know that everything's legit. And I'm showing this report to you not to impress you. It actually impresses me. But another reason why I wanted to show you is that I'm not a genius. I was fortunate to have developed these skills over many years. And as a result, when I needed to do my GMAT, all I had to do is learn a little bit about the test and how these skills are applied to this particular situation or this particular exam. Now, you might be asking, why am I teaching the GMAT if I've done my MBA? Well, I have graduated from an MBA, and I've actually been there, done that. I've already worked for a very large corporation for about 10 years, and I found something that gives me much better satisfaction, which is the work that I'm doing right now. So I've been teaching the GMAT now for approximately 9 years, a little bit more than that. And really my goal, and I work with a lot of very, very smart people, many of them are much smarter than me, and our goal is to help 100,000 people learn a better way to learn. Learn a different way to think. Recognize that they're shortcuts. And if you learn these shortcuts, if you learn how to avoid traps, you can be very successful on this exam, in your MBA program. And ultimately, our goal is to teach you the skills that will be useful in your everyday life after you graduate from our program and long after you graduate from an MBA program as well. So, like I mentioned, I'm not a genius. I'm just the person who knows the traps, I know the shortcuts, and I know how to teach them. But I'm sure you didn't really join today to learn about me. Let me tell you something very important. And this is something that we've seen a lot in our program and people that we're working with, that anybody can get a score of 700 plus. 700 plus is a score in the top 10, 12%. But anybody can do it. Let me give you a couple of examples. You might be thinking, okay, so there's this verbal reasoning section and quantitative reasoning section. So if you want to do well in verbal, you have to be really good with English. And if you want to do well with quant, you have to be a math whiz. Well, that's not necessarily true. This person, came to our class. She was a new immigrant, just a few weeks in the country. English is definitely not her first language. She was able, within approximately 2 months, reach a score of 96th percentile on verbal without really speaking English as well as fluently as native speakers. Let me give you another example. You might be thinking, okay, yeah, that's something I can learn, but what about quant? Well, here's another gentleman. He came to our class after already having scored 44 on verbal, which was 99% at that time. He was able to improve his verbal score, but his quant score was actually terrible. And the reason for that is he's a very gifted musician, but he never had to take math in high school. So he didn't learn all of these basics that prevented him from reaching high scores. And ultimately, he was able to achieve a very high score, as you can see, 760, improve his verbal score. And at the end, he admitted to me that he's still not that good with math. But what he did learn is essentially the music behind the GMAT, all of these shortcuts, all of these different ways to think. So as you could see, there is a way. There's a way to do well on the GMAT, and that way isn't really dependent on what you did in school. And in fact, sometimes it could be contrary to what you learned in school. There's a system to this test. And if we want to understand the system, there's something very, very important that we need to understand. We talked about getting outside of a comfort zone. And Nemas was also talking a lot. I was keeping track of what words he used a lot. And besides the word Hult, he used a lot of the word skills and the practical application. And this is really what the GMAT's about. Let's actually go to the source and let's ask people who created the test, what do they think about the test? Here's what they say. Rather than testing the knowledge of business, okay, so let's stop here for a moment. If you want to do an exam in philosophy, you need to know some philosophy, right? You want to do an exam in business, you don't need to know anything about business. This is very interesting. Not only you don't need to know anything about business, but you also don't need to know anything about other subject matters, including philosophy. Instead, the GMAT exams measures higher order reasoning skills, the skills that matter in the management classrooms and in the 21st century workplace. We see that word again. You will need basic and operating not an expert knowledge of geometry, algebra, statistics, and the English language to demonstrate different types of reasoning skills. So the GMAT told us exactly what we need to demonstrate if you want to do well on a test. And in fact, if you're detail-oriented enough and you looked at the names of the sections on the GMAT, you will have noticed that 3 of them have the word reasoning: quantitative reasoning, verbal reasoning, and integrated reasoning. And the 4th one has the word analytical. So these are really the skills that the GMAT wants us to demonstrate. It's not about quantitative, it's about reasoning. It's not so much about verbal, it is really about reasoning. And again, who said this? The people who created the test. They're trying to help us, and most of us miss this. And as a result, we typically study for this test the way we would study for any other exam. Let me give you an example. If you decided to study for this exam, and I'm sure you probably have been there, or maybe you know somebody who were there, you're trying to study for this exam. Have you ever studied for an exam before? Yes, we did, for a lot of exams in our school and then in college or university. So how do we study for the exam? Well, we go to a bookstore and we pick up a book. So you go to the bookstore, you look through all of these books, and you're asking yourself, well, what book should I pick up? And then you see these books. These books say the GMAT official guide. And you're thinking, okay, so these books have got to be the best books because they're official and they're going to guide me through this experience. And then you're picking up these 3 books and you read them cover to cover and you're trying to take the test and you're not very successful. So what do you think people usually do at this point? Do they say, wait a second, maybe I didn't have the right study skills. Maybe I didn't use the books for what they're intended to. Is that what we usually think? No. We usually say, not the right book. I need different books. And then they go ask their friends, what are better books? And then the friend said, yes, of course, there are better books. And maybe these books, or maybe these books, or maybe these books. This book was written by one of our instructors. And then they overload themselves with books, and they're saying, okay, where do I go from here? I used to have 1 book or 3 books. Now I have 15 different books. What do I do? And it wasn't something that was wrong with the books. It was with our approach to using the books. Let me give you another example. What do you think about this statement? Knowledge is power. Seems powerful, right? Knowledge is power. Been around for many, many years. Oh, let me give you an example. Let's say you're trying to learn how to swim. So you'll say, okay, I'm going to go to the bookstore. I'm going to gain all the knowledge. I'm going to read a very good book on how to swim. And then I'm going to try to compete with somebody who invested time and effort in developing the swimming skills. Who do you think is going to be more successful? So knowledge is no longer power. Notice how Nemas didn't really mention the word knowledge as much, but he kept mentioning the word skills. And this is what the employers are also looking for. They're looking for people who have skills. If you ever applied for a job, you've probably seen the section skills, and I can almost bet that you almost never saw the section that's called knowledge. Now, if you've been studying this way, and you're thinking, okay, well, but wait a second. Why did I do this? Let me tell you, there's actually nothing wrong with you. Because let me bring you back a little in the past. Does anybody have small children? Or maybe you were a small child at some point? So let me refresh a little bit of what happened when you were a small child. When you were born, you had almost no skills. You didn't know how to walk, you didn't know how to talk, but then you started developing the skills, you started growing, and then your parents were around you or your guardians, and they were trying to help you. And when you learned how to walk, let me tell you, for the first few weeks, you failed miserably. But your parents were there for you. They didn't really say, son or daughter, you were trying to walk for the last week and you weren't really successful, you failed, you didn't get good grades in walking, so I think that we are going to just think of a different career for you. I think we will try to teach you how to swim instead. Right? Is this what happened? No. They were there to support you, and they understood the process. They really got it. It was all about skills, and eventually you're going to be there. Eventually you're going to develop them. And it was totally okay to fail because they were there to support you. So this is what you went through until you were about 5. And then when you turned 5, this is what happened. You were in our school system, and all of a sudden, it was not okay to fail. And if I were to ask you, and I can't see you unfortunately, but please participate, put up your hand if you like failing. We all don't like failing, but let me tell you, we all failed many, many times when we develop new skills, because if you don't have this skill yet, you're not going to be successful at the beginning. Until you were 5, it was okay. After you were 5, it was not okay anymore because you did not want to get a bad grade because all of a sudden it reflected badly on you. Right? And then, of course, I'm sure this was very motivating and you really looked forward to going to a school, especially if you were getting these types of grades, right? Now, if you want to see a very good video about our school system, go on YouTube and look at this video, The People versus the School System. And it will give you a little bit of an insight how our school system works. So really, it weren't you. It was our school system, it was our environment that conditioned you that you need to study this way. You were rewarded for memorizing things. In school, if you needed to pass a history exam, you just had to learn some history, and as long as you remember it, you would get a good grade, and then nobody cares whether you know it the day after. So not only that, but just our entire environment has conditioned us for this. Because let me tell you something. If you want an ice cream, for example, and you're walking up to an ice cream truck, and you're saying, okay, I'd like to buy an ice cream, please. Here's my $5. And you get an ice cream right away. What would it be like if you give them $5 and then they will tell you, look, please come back 2 weeks later? And I'm sure you're not going to like this, because we want instant gratification. We want an immediate benefit. And this is really our consumption culture. We consume knowledge very quickly, but the benefit of knowledge fades over time. And in fact, if you have a lot of knowledge, you're not really going to get an edge, because everybody can have knowledge right now. Google just turned 20, so if you want to have any knowledge, all you have to do is have a mobile device that's connected to the internet. But if you think of something that's a little more important, and actually what you will see is a lot more important in our everyday life, is a skill. Skill is an investment. Initially, you are not going to be very successful, and you're not going to be very high on that scale in terms of your mastery of skills. But then with time, as you keep investing your time, as you keep investing your efforts, you will develop these skills, and then you get to keep them. And your benefits from these skills will continue giving back. So you can think of skills as an investment, but knowledge as a consumption, and this is what they really are. Now, going back to the GMAT, we can see this very clearly in the GMAT results, because most of the people study for this test the way that they used to study for tests. They learn content. They just say, okay, here's what I need to learn. Here's the types of questions. I'm going to read the book, and I'm going to try to memorize it. And these are the scores that they get. An average score worldwide is 561. As you can see, not a very high score. Can't really get you very far. But if you start developing skills, then you're going to start seeing very different results. So here at Admit Master, we focus very heavily into skills development. Yeah, you do need to have some basic knowledge, but not a lot. Probably 20% of your time preparing for this test is going to be dedicated to gaining this knowledge. 80% is going to be dedicated to developing the skills. There are a lot of skills. How to manage your time, how to make good decisions, how to analyze information, how to manage your psychology, how to keep your confidence. This is a lot more important. So these are the kinds of results that you will expect if you will start developing your skills and investing in your skills. And these are reliable results, because we keep track of all of our students' results, because we have a very high touch program. And that's why we know that skills really work, or the skills development really work. Now, I don't want you to take my word for it. Let's go to this person. I'm sure you know who this person is. He is one of the greatest investors of probably not just a century, but of our lifetime, or of maybe many centuries. Now, if we ask this person, Warren Buffett, Warren, tell us please, what is the best investment? I invest into something. What should I invest in? Here's what he is going to say. Ultimately, there's one investment that supersedes all others. Invest in yourself. Because, you know what? Anybody can read a book. If you're 2 or 3 years old, you already know how to read books. But if you want results in the top 10%, you need to do things differently from the other 90% of people. So if you haven't been seeing results, go and find these 90% of people. Maybe you are now part of that 90%, and ask them, what are they doing to get these results? And don't do it, because it certainly doesn't get them to the top 10%. Or better yet, find people who are getting these results and ask them, what are they doing? How are they getting in the top 10%? And most of them are going to say it's really all about developing the skills. It's really all about developing a new way to think. And I'm sure if you are investing the time tonight into this webinar, and if you're thinking of going to an MBA program, then you also understand that an MBA program isn't really about knowledge. I mean, if you want to know something about accounting, you can read a book on accounting, or you can take a free online course or read a $40 book. You don't need to spend $50,000 or $100,000 going into a business school just to gain knowledge. This is not what the business school is about. Remember, it's all about skills, practical applications. It's about bringing theory to life. That I'm just repeating what Nema said. It's all about leadership skills. You can't really read a book on how to be a leader and all of a sudden become a leader. You need to start investing time into these skills. And again, initially, you're not going to be very successful. Initially, it's going to be painful, but it's short-term pain for a long-term gain. And then you get to keep these skills, right? So I'm sure if you're here, you're looking for a change in your career. You're looking for a change in your life. You're looking to do something different. How to certainly a school that can really open up a lot of different avenues for you. I mean, just even think about going to 3 different campuses abroad. Speaking about thinking outside the box, I love this quote, and I'm sure you know who this person is, Albert Einstein, and I'm sure you heard this quote many times. But if things haven't been working yet, you need to start thinking differently. There's a different way to think. There are people who are successful in every area of the life, and there are people who are very successful in the GMAT, and you can certainly start picking out these skills and say, this is not just about knowing formulas. This is not about gaining knowledge. And this is what we do here at Admit Master. We would, if you would like to invest in developing your skills, then we would love to see you in one of our classes. You can take our in-person class in these 4 cities, Toronto, New York, Chicago, and Montreal, and you can also take them anywhere online. And essentially this program, as you can see, it's about twice as long as most of the other programs, because we really want to make sure that you have the opportunity to develop these skills. We can cram a lot of knowledge within a very, very short time. You know, most of the classes are 15, sometimes 20, 27, 30 hours. But if you want to develop the skills and get enough feedback and really make sure that you're walking out of a class having this new way to think, then you need this time. We also know that just the classes themselves are probably not going to be enough. That's why we give you a lot of support. You're going to be in small classes, first of all, but outside of classes, we're going to coach you all throughout your experience, before you come to the class and long after you come to the class. We even give you an opportunity to retake these classes for free for 1 year. Ultimately, we're a private company. We're a medium-sized private company. Our reputation is a lot more important than the short-term profit. That's why we want to make sure that if you invest your time into this journey, then we want to invest in you as well. We invest in our reputation. And as long as this is a good fit, then we will give you a guarantee that we're going to continue working with you until you reach the results that you want and that you wish. And really, the sky is the limit. Well, actually, 800 scores the limit. Most people don't really need the 800, but we can help you get there if you really, really want. It is going to be a lot of work. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is actually go on our website and explore the different options. And also you can read some reviews and testimonials from other people, so you can learn a little bit about how other people work. Even if you're in a city where you cannot take our class and for a certain reason you cannot take our online class, you can at least read what other people did. There are a lot of people who were able to achieve high scores. We certainly want to make sure that we add a lot of value. We certainly want to make sure that your experience is going to be very different. A lot of people come to us after the class and they say, this was really such a different class. It was nothing like I was expecting, and it was certainly nothing like any other class that I've ever done in my life. And here's a really good quote as well. Keep me engaged, keep me challenged. This is really, unfortunately right now we cannot interact. If we were in person, you would be doing a lot of things in this webinar, because I want to make sure that you're really engaged, that you're really challenged, and ultimately walk out of this seminar, you walk out of the class, say, I've done it, I've learned it. Then I would say, my job is done. Because you're not there in class, you're not here tonight to simply learn how Sergey can do a question. And we'll do one more question, by the way. I'll get you to do one more question. But it's really for you to learn things, for you to start developing these skills. Because if you're sitting at home and you're studying with books, if you have these skills, it's definitely possible to achieve a high score. But if you don't have these skills yet, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just maybe through your education, through a prior education, you just didn't have an opportunity to develop these skills. Then maybe there's time to start reaching out to people who say, teach me something. I'd like to learn, because that's something I can take with me. So ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, my job today was to tell you that there's a different way. We've learned a certain specific way, but there's a secret out there. And the secret is that that way isn't really working very well for most people. As you have probably seen, there's a pretty big gap between people who have an MBA and people who don't, even in terms of their salary and career progression, because people who have an MBA, they really invest a lot in developing these skills. So you need to start shifting your perspective a bit. That developing skills will be hard, but it will be something that you need if you want to get ahead. And I wanted to show you and kind of wrap up with one more question. And that is going to be now quantitative reasoning section. We've done a verbal reasoning question at the beginning of this webinar, and now we're going to do the quantitative question. So I'm going to give you a question. I'll give you about 20 seconds to think about it, and then we'll have a discussion about it. Okay, so you might, again, you might be reading this for the second time. You might be saying, wait a second, it's a problem-solving question. Yeah, I see a question, but I don't see answer choices. So maybe show me the answer choices. As soon as I see the answer choices, I'll say, of course, it has to be this one. So let me show you the answer choices. Okay, so what do you think? Do the answer choices help, or do they make this question even more confusing? I know they seem to make the question even more confusing, especially because in the answer choices, we see these variables. We don't like variables. We don't like algebra. We like numbers, right? So what most people do at this point, they're just saying, oh, okay, I understand. There is this person who is going at one speed, X miles an hour, and then walking back at a different speed, Y miles an hour. Yeah, and the question is how many miles? So I remember this formula. Distance is equal to rate times time. And then what I can do is I can start writing different equations. For example, there's a distance from home, there's a distance back home. And then I know there's time, so maybe I can add the times together. I know the distances are the same because he's going back all the way back home. So I can try to maybe rewrite these equations. It seems like I still have a lot of variables. Not really sure where I'm going with this. Not really sure how to get to where I need to be. Yeah, maybe I need to find the distance, but I have too many variables to find them. So after 5 minutes, I'll just say, okay, you know what? There's 31 questions. Maybe I'll get to the other 30. So I'll give up. Now, this is if you now have the knowledge. But what if you have the skills? What if you master the skills? Here's how you're going to look at this question. You're going to say, okay, well, the answer choices, they are so valuable. Because here's something very interesting. I am looking for the distance. I'm looking for miles. Now, normally, to find the distance, we take time and we multiply by the rate. We would never add time to the rate. That's really not what we do. It is an illegal operation. Well, let's take a look at what they do here in the answer choices. In the answer choice B, they're adding speed to time. They do the same in D, and they do the same in E. So we are down to 2 answer choices only, A and C. Again, let's look at A because it's a little bit shorter. X divided by Y times T. Remember, X is a speed, Y is a speed. If we divide speed by speed, all of the units of measure are going to cancel out, and we're going to be left with T, which is hours. Are we looking for hours? No, we're looking for the distance. So A is not the right answer. Has to be C. That's it. We're done. And we're done in about 30 seconds. So that's really what's going to happen if you start developing the skill of looking to what you need to look and analyzing information in a very logical way. Once you master the GMAT, you can certainly get to a score of 700 or even more. So you might be thinking, okay, yeah, I get this, but I don't really have the time for this. I don't really have the time to develop in these skills. I don't really have the time to study. Yeah, but also, do you really have 5 minutes to do this question? Nobody has more time than you, and nobody has less time. Everybody has exactly 24 hours in a day and exactly 60 minutes in an hour. So getting ahead in life is not about having more time. It's about knowing the shortcuts. Or you might be thinking, yeah, I know, but I don't really have the money to invest in studying for the GMAT or maybe an MBA. Well, remember, This is an investment. Don't think of this as a consumption. Knowledge is consumption. Your ice cream is a consumption. What you invest in yourself is something that you're hoping to get a return. And then to help you make this investment even more attractive, if you were to decide to take any of our programs, make sure you mention this code HULT100, and we're going to give you $100 off any of our GMAT courses, whether this is going to be an online or an in-person course. There's another excuse that some people are making. Look, yeah, I know, but I haven't really done math in school, and I don't really believe I can do it. Yeah, I know this is very nice. This guy who was studying for 2 weeks, who is a rocket scientist, he had all these skills that he developed in school. But you know what? I also started from nothing. And you can get to a high GMAT score within much shorter time than 7 years, trust me. You just have to believe in yourself. And I love this quote from Henry Ford: whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are looking at this and you're saying, okay, that's great. What if I already have these skills? There's a very easy way to assess. All you have to do is, just like Nemas recommended, go and take a diagnostic test. You can go and take a diagnostic test on our website. We can log into a backend. We can see a lot of analytics about exactly what you did. And I can give you personal feedback. Just please reach out. And as a bonus, we're going to give you a 7-day trial of our learning platform that you would be getting if you were to take our online course or our in-person course. And there's absolutely no credit card needed. All you have to do is punch in your a little bit of your basic contact information, and you can take this practice test. So if you don't get something that you want to get in life, is usually an excuse. There might be some good reasons, but if you're here and you're thinking of a GMAT and you're not getting good results, there probably is an excuse. So I want to leave you with this one final quote by the person whose name is Zig Ziglar. You may have heard of him. What he said is, most people who fail in their dream fail not from lack of ability, but from lack of commitment. And that's really what separates successful people from unsuccessful people. Now, if you are ready to commit, if you are ready to study smart, I would love to invite you to join us. Join any of these classes. We do offer fairly regular classes, but in New York, in Chicago, in Toronto, and in Montreal, we're starting our class in the next 30 days. You can start online at any time. Make sure that you use this promo code HULT100 to save $100. Or what you could do is just go on our website, explore your options, sign up for a one-on-one consultation. Remember that this is a two-way street. We are going to invest in you, and you're going to invest in your skills. So we want to make sure it's a good fit. That's why you can't even go on our website and simply sign up for this class, pay your fee, and show up. We need to have this discussion because we want to make sure that there's a really, really good synergy, because what we're trying to do, helping you develop the skills and where you are trying to go. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being here. I want to congratulate you again for investing your evening into learning something valuable. And we are now going to be here to answer any of your questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and we'll stick around for a few minutes. Anything you'd like to know about the Hult program, anything you'd like to know about studying for the GMAT, about the resources for the GMAT, if you have any personal question, for example, I've been doing this and it's not working, how do I get here? Then please connect with us. Here are our emails. But if you have any questions that you believe would benefit other people, then please type them up and we'll be happy to answer them. Okay, Nemas, I do not see any questions in the chat box. If you do.
Yeah, I don't see any questions either, Sergey. So I guess there are no questions. Thank you very much to everyone who's attended this evening. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about Admit Master, please reach out. And if you'd like to learn a little bit about Hult, reach out to me. Hold on, Sergey, there's one question for you. How much time do you evaluate the training? And what is the study period?
How long, sorry?
How much time do you need to evaluate the training and the study period?
So how much would somebody need to get a good score in the GMAT?
Yeah, so for you to evaluate the training, and how long would the study period be?
Okay, so first of all, what I would recommend is if you'd like to know how long it might potentially take you to do well on the GMAT to reach a certain score, usually the first step would be to take a diagnostic test. You can go on our website, take this test, send me a personal email. I'm going to personally look at your test and I will give you some feedback, and I can tell you exactly how long it might take you to study. Essentially, what we'd like to do is we would like to front load your learning of all the skills, all the strategies that you need. So as soon as you're getting up to speed with some of the basics. So let me just maybe bring this a little bit to how our program would work, and then you can extrapolate to this to maybe the way that you've been studying or thinking of studying. So as a very first step, if you were to take our class, we would ask you to work on refreshing your foundational math and a little bit of knowledge of English grammar, and we'll be providing you with exercises to do so. So by the time you come to the class, and essentially by the time you are going to be ready to develop these skills, you will have probably spent anywhere from a week to maybe about a month refreshing what you've learned in high school. Now, the good news is you don't need to learn a lot of things or refresh a lot of things. There's a very small subset of what you learn in high school that's actually tested on the GMAT. So that's the first step. Then the next step is to really be in an environment that's a little more intensive. That's why our classes are 6 weeks long, 8 hours a week if you were to take them in class. Because we want to make sure that you're dedicating about 15 to 20 hours a week, getting outside of your comfort zone and learning these skills in a way that's a little more intensive than how you probably were studying before, because we want to make sure that you're also breaking some of your old habits. So that would take about 6 weeks. And then after that, you are on a very good trajectory. Essentially, you already have all of these skills, but maybe you're not yet so comfortable with them. And at that time, it could really take you anywhere from maybe 2 weeks to another 6 to 8 weeks. And during this time, you're going to continue taking practice tests, continue working on practice problems, continue focusing specifically on areas where you need the most improvement. And this is how you're seeing progress, is you're always working on your weaknesses, and then every week you're taking a practice test. So you need to follow a very good study plan. If you want to see results, as you've probably heard many times, failing to plan is planning to fail. That is very, very important here on this test. Is you need to have a good plan, and you also need to know every week what are you doing. So we've seen people improve 200 points in 2-3 months. That's what typically most people are going to see. If you can spend very little time studying, then you might see results slower. If you can invest more time, more than 15-20 hours a week, you might see results faster.
Are there any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, Sergey, I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much to everybody who attended. Like I said before, if you would like to get in touch with Admitmaster, please reach out to Sergey. His contact information is available on the screen. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about Hult International Business School and the programs that we offer and how we can partner with you to help you achieve your goals, your career goals, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My contact information is also available on the screen. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Okay, thank you as well. And good luck with your GMAT.